Eric lives in Russia and he is doing ministry there. So Eric, why don't you share with us what it means to create and use relevant content that connects with your audience?
Thanks, Cheryl. I have the privilege of living in Russia and working on a team that is thinking about how to use digital tools and resources in Russian. And Russia's a little bit further back from the rest of Europe in the whole coronavirus process. If you look at this slide, it's something I pulled from nextstrain.org, which tracks the development and the spread of COVID-19 virus on a genetic level. And what you'll notice as you look at this map is that Russia is not prominently featured. Part of that is probably that Russia is not being entirely forthcoming with their public health data, which sounds crazy, I know. But I think it also reflects the degree to which Russia has been a little bit behind the rest of Europe in this process. And that means that we've had the benefit of seeing where the rest of Europe is and knowing that's a place that we're going to. That's also meant that there isn't a whole lot of content that's already developed in Russian that speaks to this issue. So we found ourselves in this position where we have an idea of where we're going to be a couple of weeks down the road, and this amazing opportunity to speak hope to the Russian-speaking world in a critical moment, and to equip our organization, the body of Christ, to speak to that moment. But in order to make the most of that opportunity, we have to create content that doesn't currently exist in our language, that speaks in a compelling way. And so what I want to share is just a few principles that have helped us in that process of making our own content to speak in this moment to these audiences. And in order to do that, we've had to answer a few simple questions, and just want to share with you in the hope that it will help you in your own journey toward developing content. And a disclaimer, this is not rocket science. I mean, if this is the part of the webinar where you are hoping to hear something innovative and amazing, I get to disappoint you for about 5 minutes or so, because these are some simple questions and they may seem really basic, but these are the bedrock of any conversation and any content exposure that helps somebody take the next step. So there's 3 questions. The first is really, who is my audience? What are they looking for? And what brings them value? Good content always starts with who you're trying to engage and understanding what they're looking for. A second, good content is not so much about what you want to say as about how you're saying it. And then where's the intersection between the coronavirus, the audience what my audience is looking for, and my own voice and message? That's the sweet spot that you're looking to hit with any content that you're engaging, that you're building. So for us, our intersection, honestly, I can't say this strongly enough. If you remember nothing else from this short little time, remember this: good content is always audience-centered. It always begins in focusing on who are you trying to reach and what are they looking for. As people who are entrusted with the gospel, I feel like I always want to start with what I want to say. I start with the message, and that's not how compelling content works. Compelling content starts by asking the question, who is my audience and what do they need and what are they looking for? We use something called a persona to express this, which is a research-driven process of understanding what we're trying to reach, who we're trying to reach. But honestly, at its core, it just really comes down to trying to understand who your audience is through their eyes. For us in Russia, as we've been trying to develop our content, we focused on 2 specific audiences. One is an audience we named Nikita, who represents a spiritually curious, non-believing student-age persona. And asking the question, what do we feel like Nikita is looking for in his own eyes in the midst of this crisis? We feel like security and stability in the midst of the unknown. There's also a persona called Olya, and she represents a follower of Jesus who wants to grow in their faith. The intersection of what Olya is looking for and what we can offer in the midst of this crisis is hope. Hope that she already has in Jesus since she follows him already, and how to share that hope with others. Your audiences may look different. They may have different concerns. They may have different needs, but understanding who they are and asking those questions is critical to being able to put the right opportunity in front of them. Now, you may not have to develop your own content from scratch to speak to that intersection. You may have content that's available that can be changed, that can be repurposed, that can be shifted a bit to speak to the needs of your audience right now. We didn't necessarily have a lot of that, so we had the privilege of getting to dig in and make it. And honestly, I mean, this might sound crazy, but it was not nearly as difficult as we expected it to be. If you know your audience and you know your message and you know your tone and your voice, creating a simple piece of content, whether that's a post, a picture, a poll, an article, it all comes back to understanding your audience, understanding your message, and finding that intersection. So once you've got your content, there's a few more critical questions you have to answer. One is what platform does this content live on? It could be a website article, it could be a social media post, it could be something in Instagram, YouTube, but figuring out what your content is making and what it's going to live somewhere. But then for us, that's your second question is how is your audience going to find the content that you're creating? How are you going to bring them there? That may be through sharing on social channels. It may be through just personal messages. It might be advertising. You might be in a position where you can, as an organization or as a ministry, for a reasonably small amount of money, you can bring your audience to the pieces of content. It might be something like search. Google search, Yandex search. You can set up an advertisement that says, when people are looking for these terms, I want to show them this resource. And then the third question is, how do you help your audience take the next step in their spiritual journey? For us, exposing people to content, it's not an end to itself. It's a means toward an end. For us, a lot of times that means a couple of different things. Either an opportunity for them to see and be exposed to something else, or to ask a question of a trained mentor. So thinking through not just what do I want someone to see, but what's the action I want them to take to help them in their next step in their spiritual journey. So yesterday, we've in Russia, feels like we've been behind in this process. Around lunchtime, we got the news that President Putin was going to make a national address sometime after 3:00 p.m. And around 4:00, Vladimir Vladimirovich went on the air and announced a countrywide shutdown for the next week. The number of cases of coronavirus in Moscow are really growing, and we're heading into a moment where this disease and its consequences, they've moved from something that's happening elsewhere to something that's at the forefront of Russian thought. And this next slide is the Russian version of Google, which is called Yandex. It's the most popular search engine. And right now in St. Petersburg, if you search for coronavirus, fear, and crisis, this is the top return that you get is an article that we posted a week and a half ago, because we were able to see where this trend was taking us and think about content that would meet the needs of our audiences. And in this moment, when people are asking questions and searching for answers, we've already been able to put some content pieces up that have been running for a couple of weeks that are being shared and that are generating their own traffic. And so on this final slide, there's a list of content we've already created in the past couple of weeks in Russian that's available for you to adapt, translate, edit, post on your own platforms. Here it's available and translated in English. And we're trying to add to this on a regular basis. And our heart is just to create some simple, basic, compelling content that meets the needs of our audience and points them to Jesus. And that's something that any of you can do. This is actually a simple process. So I would love to encourage you to take the step of faith, to trust God that your voice matters and that you have something to say to your audience. And think first about them, what brings them value, and how you can help them take their next step toward Jesus. So, thanks.